I didn't even flinch when she said it. I just stood there, looking at her in that rented kitchen, holding the box of my own shirts she'd packed with more contempt than care. Her lashes were caked, her tone smug, but what got me was how proud she looked after dropping that line, like it was some mic drop moment in a soap opera. You're not the man I brag about, just the one who pays. All right. I nodded once. Set the box down. Walked to the closet, opened the safe, and pulled the binder. Quiet. No anger. No noise. I'd been building this move for weeks. That line didn't trigger me, it confirmed the green light. It was go time. Let me make this real clear. I didn't get here overnight. I didn't wake up one day and decide to cut off access. I gave her years. Years of showing up, paying bills, fixing things she broke, explaining things she refused to learn, absorbing hits she swore weren't hits. I'd known for a while she didn't respect me. I just didn't think she'd be stupid enough to say it out loud. But the thing about people who think they're always winning, they get sloppy. Especially when they think you're too weak or too programmed to walk away. I was both for a long time. Then I wasn't. We met in 2018. I was 34, just made regional director at the warehouse chain I'd been with since I was 22. Owned a modest 2-bedroom in Riverside. Nothing flashy, but mine. Paid off. She came into my life like a lightning bolt, loud, confident, expensive. Real estate agent, or so she said. Hustler type. Designer bags, acrylic nails. Brunch with the girls. 3 times a week. I should have paid more attention. I was thinking with the wrong head at first, I'll admit that. She knew how to play up the attention. Knew exactly what to say to make me feel like a king. You're different from these boys out here. I need a real man in my life. You're the only one who understands how hard I work. She moved in 6 months later. Claimed her lease ended early, said it didn't make sense to pay 2 rents when we were already living like a couple. I said sure. I thought it was smart. She never paid a cent. I didn't bring it up at first. Thought she'd settle into her groove, contribute eventually. But her groove turned out to be wine deliveries, luxury candles, and TikToks about manifesting abundance. Her version of work was posting house tours she didn't list and networking at bottomless mimosa spots with other women who also didn't seem to sell anything. I paid for groceries, utilities, the mortgage, insurance, the dog she insisted we rescue. I even paid off a couple of her credit cards when she said her ex put her in debt. Found out later they were shopping sprees from Zara and Sephora. And still, I stuck it out. Part loyalty, part sunk cost fallacy. Part embarrassment, too. I didn't want to admit to my friends I was being used. We men don't exactly sit around talking about stuff like that. We hold it. We push through. But the signs were there. Always were. She'd post photos of our dinners, cropped me out. Tag the restaurant, not the man who paid. If I brought it up, she'd say I was being insecure. She wore an engagement ring she picked out, and posted a soft proposal story before I'd even planned anything. When I said I hadn't proposed yet, she laughed and said, "Well, you're going to." Every time I pushed back even a little, she flipped it. Turned into the victim. Said I made her feel unsupported. That I was limiting her vision. But what vision? She wasn't building anything. She was burning through what I built. I worked 50-hour weeks. Came home to find food delivery boxes on the counter, the dog unwalked, her stretched out on the couch filming some day in the life nonsense with a filter thick enough to erase who she really was. She never bragged about me. Not to her friends. Not online. Not even to her family. When I met her parents, her mom asked if I was the finance guy. I said I worked in logistics. She looked confused. Turns out my girlfriend told them I was a private investor. She thought the truth was beneath her. But she was fine using the debit card. Then came the car. She totaled hers texting while driving. I offered to help her get a replacement with a cosign. She threw a fit. Said, If you really loved me, you'd buy it. What kind of man wants his woman in a beat-up Toyota? I caved. Got her a lease under my name. That was my last big mistake. 2 months later, I saw DMs pop up on her tablet. I wasn't snooping. It was linked to the TV. She forgot to log out. Some guy named Tone, asking when he'd see her again. She replied with a selfie in the car I paid for. Said, "Missed this ride." I didn't confront her that night. I needed a plan. Because here's the thing, I'd been letting stuff slide, but I wasn't stupid. I had my own accounts. My own lawyers. My own fireproof safe under the floorboards. So I started shifting. First, I froze the joint account. Quietly. Then I sold some stock, cleared the house title into a trust. Next, I called the dealership and bought out the lease on the car. Parked it at my cousin's shop. Reported it missing. I told her the bank had flagged unusual spending and locked everything. She pouted, but believed me. Said, "I'll just use Apple Pay for now." Didn't realize those cards were connected to the joint account too. Then I waited. And that brings us back to the kitchen. Her saying I wasn't the man she bragged about. No surprise. She never wanted a man to brag about. She wanted a man to fund her lifestyle while she played goddess for her followers. That night, I told her to pack up and leave. She said, "You can't kick me out. I live here." I showed her the deed with her name nowhere on it. She screamed, called me controlling, manipulative, broke. Said I'd never find anyone like her. I said, "That's the point." She left in her robe and slippers, dragging a rolling suitcase. She thought she'd be back in a day, max. That was 6 months ago. Since then? She tried to open a new card, got denied. Her credit? Tanked. I'd cut off the lifelines but didn't sabotage anything. Just removed what wasn't hers to begin with. She called my office once. Told HR I was emotionally abusive. They'd seen me grind for 10 years. Didn't bite. Didn't even call me in. Just flagged it and let me know. A week later, a mutual friend sent me a clip. She'd posted a video crying about betrayal by someone she trusted. Comments were full of fire emojis and, "You got this, queen." But not a single offer for rent money. The followers don't pay your bills. And the men who do eventually smarten up. I'm not saying I was perfect. I ignored my gut too long. I let sex and silence buy my compliance. I played the part of stable provider even when I was barely staying sane. But I stopped. That's what matters. I learned. Now, I keep my circle tight. I vet hard. I don't apologize for asking questions or wanting reciprocity. If that makes me harsh, so be it. I live alone. Peaceful. Quiet. The dog's still with me. And every time I check my accounts, see the numbers growing again, feel my chest loosen just a bit, I know I made the right call. She said I wasn't the man she bragged about. Now she has nothing left to post. I didn't gloat. Still don't. When I tell people what happened, I leave out most of the details. Not because I'm ashamed, but because explaining too much sounds like you're still living in it. I'm not. I left that version of me behind the day I reclaimed my front door. But some things stick with you, even if you don't talk about them much. Like that first Saturday morning after she left. I woke up before sunrise out of habit. She used to sleep until noon. The house was quiet. Too quiet at first. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and just listened. No heels clicking across the floor. No voice yelling from the bathroom for me to bring in the charger. No music blasting some playlist called Rich B***TCH Energy. Just me. My breath. The fridge hum. And then it hit me how much noise she brought. Not just literal, but mental noise. Emotional interference. Every plan, every decision, every dollar I made, filtered through how she'd feel, what she'd say, how she'd spin it. I used to think that was compromise. What you do when you love someone. Now I see it was erosion. Small, steady, Always me shrinking so she could stay inflated. A few weeks in, I got a call from her mother. Never liked me. She made that clear at Thanksgiving 2 years ago when she pulled me aside and said, "You'll never be able to keep her happy, you know." Like happiness was something to be bought, and I couldn't afford it. Anyway, she called to ask if I really needed to be so cruel. Said her daughter was living out of an Airbnb and couldn't get into her accounts. I said, "That's not my concern anymore." She hung up. No goodbye. I found out later her dad had cut her off too. Said she was using emotional blackmail to get money from their retirement savings. Guess the apple didn't fall far, just rolled into a prettier Instagram filter. That's the thing, when someone builds their whole identity on performance, eventually the stage collapses. And when there's no real work behind it, no substance, no truth, there's nothing left. Meanwhile, I rebuilt. Quietly. I started doing Sunday cookouts again with the guys. Mark, Chris, Javi, guys who had faded out when I was deep in relationship mode. I'd blamed them for not supporting us. Now I realized they just didn't want to watch me disappear. Mark brought it up one day. Said, "We didn't know how to say it. You were there, but you weren't. Like you'd rented your brain out and couldn't break the lease." He was right. I was showing up everywhere as half a man. Smiling through disrespect. Laughing off jabs that weren't funny. Paying bills and calling it love. It's wild what you justify when you're afraid of starting over. But starting over was the best thing I did. I didn't date for a while. Not out of bitterness, just needed to reset my compass. Had to ask myself some hard questions. Why did I ignore the signs? Why did I keep paying when I felt depleted? Why did I think being a good man meant being a quiet wallet? And more importantly, what was I gonna do different next time? I made rules. Not for women, for myself. No more living with someone unless we split bills for real. No more co-signing anything that wasn't a marriage or a business contract. No more silence when something felt off. And I'd never again stay with someone who bragged about what I bought but stayed quiet about who I was. A few months ago, I ran into her. Grocery store. She looked different, tired, thinner, like the lifestyle was weighing more than she could lift. She smiled like nothing had happened. Said, "Wow, you look good. Must be nice not having to support me anymore." I looked her dead in the eye. "Yeah. It is." She laughed, but it was hollow. I could tell she expected me to flirt, to joke, to offer a coffee. Old patterns? Instead, I paid for my groceries and walked out. Didn't look back. 2 days later, a mutual friend messaged me. Said she'd started posting again, some vague captions about toxic masculinity and reclaiming herself from the patriarchy. Same script, new followers. I didn't care. Because here's what people don't tell you: peace is addictive. When you finally get it, you guard it like a vault. Now, I sleep through the night. I invest more. I lift again. I mentor a couple of younger guys at work. Guys on the edge of where I was, burned out, confused, stuck in relationships where they're doing all the heavy lifting and still being told they're not enough. I don't preach. I just listen. And when they ask how I got through it, I tell them the truth. You don't save someone by setting yourself on fire. You don't prove your worth by funding someone else's fantasy. And you sure as hell don't stick around after she tells you you're just the man who pays. You walk. You rebuild. And you protect your name, your mind, your wallet, and your damn peace like your life depends on it. Because it does. I'm not the man she brags about. Never was. But I'm the man I can look in the mirror and respect. And that's all I ever needed to be. A few weeks after that grocery store run-in, she emailed me. Subject line: just closure. I almost deleted it on sight, but curiosity got the better of me. It was 5 paragraphs, typical for her. Flowery language, spiritual jargon mixed with subtle jabs. Called the past our karmic dance, said I had lessons to learn about the feminine divine. Claimed she'd forgiven me for withdrawing financial support without warning. Without warning. That line made me chuckle. As if months of freeloading, emotional disrespect, and treating me like a utility came with no consequences. As if the only harm done was to her when I finally closed the tap. She asked to have a phone conversation, just to clear the air. I didn't respond. Because I don't owe anyone closure that comes wrapped in ego. She didn't want peace, she wanted a reaction. A chance to play victim again. A final spin of the wheel. I've learned to let silence do the heavy lifting. And truthfully, I was in a different place by then. I'd sold the house. Got a solid offer, took it. Moved into a condo closer to the office, smaller, but modern. More manageable. Everything in it was mine. Nothing reminded me of her. Not the furniture, not the smell, not the dents in the wall from her throwing shoes during emotional processing. I started dating again. Slowly. There was one woman, Rachel. Accountant. Wore no makeup, drove a 10-year-old Camry, made her own coffee. First time we split the check, she didn't flinch. Just said, "Fair's fair." First time we disagreed, she didn't storm off or call me repressed. She listened. So did I. We're not exclusive or rushing anything. I'm not trying to jump from one identity into another. I've got my feet under me now. I move carefully. One thing I've noticed, it's easier to spot the signs now. The woman who hints she's looking for a man who can handle a strong woman. On the first date? I know what she means, she wants control. The woman who posts constantly but never talks about work. I ask real questions. No judgment, just clarity. The woman who seems more interested in what I have than who I am. I pass. I trust slower. But I trust smarter. That old version of me, the one who confused sacrifice with love, who stayed quiet to keep the peace. He's not dead. He's just informed now. That guy still sits in the back of my mind, reminding me what it costs to learn the difference between being generous and being used. One of the guys at work, young kid, maybe 26, pulled me aside last week. Said his girlfriend wanted him to take over her car payments while she pursued content creation full-time. I told him, straight up. If she doesn't see your time, your effort, your stability as value now, she never will. He said. But she says I'm her rock. I said. Rocks don't pay rent. He laughed, but the look in his eye told me he heard it. Really heard it. That's why I tell this story, even in pieces. Not for pity. Not for payback. For the men like him, decent guys raised to provide, to hold the line, to keep their voice down when the room gets loud. Sometimes you need someone who's been there to say it straight. You are not weak for leaving. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not selfish for protecting your resources, financial, emotional, mental. And no woman who truly loves you will ever make you choose between being respected and being useful. That last part? That's the whole lesson. Because once the money stops, the act falls apart. And what's left is who they really are. The ones who love the spotlight you gave them? They'll turn on you when you dim it. The ones who only praise your gifts? They'll resent you the second you keep one for yourself. And the ones who said, "You're not the man I brag about, just the one who pays." They'll end up with frozen accounts, empty inboxes, and nobody left to play audience. Meanwhile, we move on. Wiser. Stronger. Quieter. Not out of pain, but peace. And that, my brother, is worth more than anything they ever posted.